In 2023, the Kansas City Chiefs offense really struggled at times until the playoffs, but even then, it was a coin's toss as to whether or not a wide receiver was actually going to catch the football. So, in the offseason, in the draft in particular, Brett Veach and the front office for the Kansas City Chiefs invested a whole lot of assets and resources into the offensive side of the ball. I don't know that we have ever seen this much go towards the offensive side of the ball. And guys, the Kansas City Chiefs may really get some results out of it. What we are looking at here is the collection of offensive players collected by the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason through the ranks of college players. You will notice that it is only those first 5 names that came to the Chiefs via the NFL draft. After that, I threw in 5 of the higher upside offensive undrafted rookie free agents, at least in my opinion. And obviously, all eyes are going to be on that top spot there, first-round pick Xavier Worthy out of Texas, and I thought that it might be useful to go over some of the other rookie wide receivers in the past few years for the Kansas City Chiefs and what they did as a rookie in order to get some feel for what the offensive impact of Xavier Worthy, is going to be this season. And guys, the numbers are disparate. Mecole Hardman, as a rookie, had 26 receptions, 538 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That is an impressive rookie season in an Andy Reid offense, to be sure. Sky Moore, 22 receptions, only 4 fewer receptions, but less than half the yards at 250 and 0 touchdowns. Last season, rookie Rashee Rice had 79 receptions, 938 yards, and 7 touchdowns for the most explosive rookie season of any of those wide receivers. Of course, none of those wide receivers were a first-round pick, and none of them ran a 4-2-1 40-yard dash, as no one has run a 4-2-1 40-yard dash in the history of the NFL. One of the interesting things to note here is that the Kansas City Chiefs seem to be getting, and I find myself saying this time and again this preseason, seem to be getting players near their ceilings pretty quickly. If you remember, Sky Moore has had 2 seasons now that were essentially identical from a statistical standpoint. That 2019 season, which was Mecole Hardman's rookie year, he had 538 yards. In 2020, his sophomore campaign, 560 yards. In 2021, his 3rd season in the NFL, he jumped to 693 yards. Which has proven to be his career high to this point, as in 2022, he fell all the way down to 297 yards. Now, Sky Moore and Mecole Hardman had essentially the same year, their first and second years in the league, and we have yet to see what Rashee Rice will do in his second season. But other than to say that he will almost undoubtedly not match those rookie numbers because he is likely to be suspended, what we can take to heart from this collection of players and their stats is that if there is NFL talent in Xavier Worthy, he is likely to reach a good portion of that in his rookie season. What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, I think that it's going to be more than Sky Moore's 22 receptions, 250 yards. I think that it is likely to be less than Rashee Rice's 79 receptions. The yardage standpoint, Rashee Rice had 938 yards. Is Xavier Worthy likely to match that number? I don't think so, simply because of the fact that that is a difficult stat to accrue as a rookie. A lot of things went right for Rashee Rice towards the end of the year, but here's the thing. I think that the yardage mark is much more understandable for Xavier Worthy's rookie season than the 79 receptions. Rashee Rice having 938 yards on 79 receptions is an 11.87 yard average. I don't think that is the type of game that Xavier Worthy is being brought in to play. This is a speed receiver, 4.21 40-yard dash. This is an explosive receiver, 41-inch vertical, 131-inch broad jump. His impact on the football team is going to be aimed at the vertical passing game. Obviously, that's not a surprise to anyone. Here is going to be the interesting thing to me. While I don't think that he's going to match Rashee Rice's rookie season receptions number, I do think there is an opportunity for him to match or exceed that 938 receiving yards. Rashee Rice played 622 offensive snaps as a rookie. I think that is 100% in the purview for Xavier Worthy, especially considering that Rashee Rice is likely to be serving a suspension in the early season. And the only name on this list who is going to be a threat to exceed that number is the very next name, Kingsley Suamataia, if he does in fact end up winning the left tackle job for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, to hit that number, that would mean averaging 37 snaps per game for Xavier Worthy. And if you want a sneaky read into the impact that Xavier Worthy may have on this offense, you have to look a little bit further out. Will the Kansas City Chiefs end up re-signing / extending Marquise Hollywood Brown? If Xavier Worthy is to come on in the way that it's possible he does, that one-season contract for Hollywood Brown might be his only stop in Kansas City. Regardless, the impact of Xavier Worthy on the 2024 Chiefs is going to be evident early. Do things open up underneath for Travis Kelce because there is some excess speed on the field? Do running lanes suddenly manifest for Isaiah Pacheco because there's one fewer safety in the box? And will we see Patrick Mahomes chucking 50-yard touchdown passes once again? Moving on to Kingsley Suamataia, look at that size, 6'4", 326 pounds. 34 1/4 inch arms, and he has 31 reps on the bench press. I think the upside on Kingsley is immense. How fast can he get there is the question. I think that Kingsley could be a multiple Pro Bowl offensive tackle type of guy. Of course, it is unlikely he ever plays in a Pro Bowl because he'll be playing in Super Bowls. Now, I already mentioned snap counts, and if the starting position is there to be had, if Kingsley Suamataia does end up being the starting left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, he's going to have absolutely massive snap count numbers coming out of his rookie season. Last year, Wanya Morris played in 14 games, started 4 games, and most of that time in playing games but not starting games, he spent on special teams where he racked up 59 snaps during the season, but he did ring up 339 snaps of offensive play. But those are not starting offensive lineman numbers. If we go back to Trey Smith's rookie season, Trey Smith was a starter right out of the gate, 17 games, 17 starts. He played 1,195 snaps as a rookie. In his sophomore campaign, 1,037, and in his third season last year, 1,086 offensive snaps. Now, there are multiple videos on the channel now where I talk about my theory that Jawan Taylor's right tackle position might be up for grabs as well. Between the 3 offensive tackles, Wanya Morris, Jawan Taylor, and Kingsley Suamataia, the Kansas City Chiefs probably have 2 pretty good options going into the year. The real trick will be sorting out which 2 those are and getting them on the field. And I think that there is some doomsdaying from the kingdom, if you will, about the left tackle position. But if you go back and, we saw this all year last season with Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith was a good enough offensive tackle. He played a lot of snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs last season, and in the playoffs, he was good enough to be the starter through that playoff run and the Super Bowl victory. But do not be confused. Donovan Smith, in a league that is hungry for offensive tackles, in a league that is especially hungry for offensive left tackles, in a league that is a desperate attempt to pass the ball, Donovan Smith, starting left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs through the 2023 season and playoffs and Super Bowl, remains a free agent. And I do not say this to disparage him. He played 594 snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs last season, starting all 9 games in which he appeared. And all of that tape is not enough to convince anyone to have signed him to their roster by this point. I think it's likely he finds a job, but he had a 55.4 rating from PFF for last season. Is it possible that neither Kingsley Suamataia or Wanya Morris is better than a 55.4 PFF grade? That's possible. But Wanya Morris, as a rookie last season, had a 55.6 in his limited play. The interesting part about the selection of Kingsley Suamataia, to me, if you are willing to be right tackle agnostic, is this. Who's Creed Humphrey? A big bruiser of a center. Who's Trey Smith? A big bruiser of a right tackle. Who is Wanya Morris? Last year, he was a big bruiser of a left tackle. Who is Kingsley Suamataia? He's very possible. It's very possible that he becomes a big bruiser of an offensive tackle as well, leaving only Joe Thuney, if the 2 young offensive tackles will start, as the finesse pass-blocking guy on the offensive line. I do not think that is by accident. And now Jared Wiley. I think that Jared Wiley is sneakily going to be the most impactful offensive rookie for the Kansas City Chiefs, whether either Xavier Worthy or Kingsley Suamataia are, in fact, starters. The way that Jared Wiley might be able to come in and change the game for the Kansas City Chiefs in different personnel packages and as a general upgrade to the backup tight end position that they had. Not saying anything about Noah Gray, but he does not look to be the athlete that is Jared Wiley. The Kansas City Chiefs have long struggled in the red zone during the Patrick Mahomes era. But if Jared Wiley is worth his weight in flour, I see no way that defenses will be able to consistently stultify both Travis Kelce and Jared Wiley on the field at the same time. Add into that the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs have bruisers on the offensive line and one of the highest effort running backs in the league in Isaiah Pacheco, and I think what we're going to see, as I've said a couple times, is a great shift of the offense between the 20s and from the 20s in. If you're on your own 35-yard line, well, it makes a lot of sense to have Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, and Mecole Hardman on the field at the same time, because that is, in effect, striking distance for that offense. But if you find yourself at the 15-yard line, 1st and 10 at the 15, well, doesn't it make sense to have Travis Kelce, Jared Wiley, maybe even Noah Gray on the field at the same time with all of those big-bodied defenders to shove them around or to get open? It's 3rd and goal at the 2. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy on the field at the same time. Now, you see on your screen right now, Xavier Worthy has a 41-inch vertical, so that might seem enticing. But one small rule change is that when a wide receiver goes up for the football in the end zone, it is now legal to push them out of bounds, and it's not a touchdown. And it's very easy to push Xavier Worthy out of the sky. So between the picks of Xavier Worthy and Jared Wiley, I think that what happened here is the offense got a whole lot more multiple. And if you squint real hard between Jared Wiley and Xavier Worthy, you can see the Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill of the future. You look at the first 3 names here, and look, Xavier Worthy is a guy who's going to be polarizing until he ends up producing in the NFL. He's very, very fast, but he's very, very light. Can he make it in the NFL? Well, there's about 2 months until we start to find out. But there are plenty of football guys who think he is a legitimate wide receiver in the NFL, chief among them Andy Reid and Brett Veach, who ended up trading up to get Xavier Worthy. So I think it's safe to assume, maybe not that he's going to be a Pro Bowl wide receiver or anything like that, but I think it's safe to assume that he is an actual legitimate NFL guy and will be a contributor on the Kansas City Chiefs. Moving past that, Kingsley Suamataia. Look, I read a lot of the commentary around Kingsley. I don't know that I read a single person who said this isn't an NFL guy. There was a lot of talk, is he a left tackle? Is he a right tackle? Is he a starter day one, etc., etc.? Everything that I saw led me to believe that Kingsley Suamataia is an NFL guy. Then Jared Wiley. I did not know terribly much about Jared Wiley going into the draft. That was a mistake. Looking at Noah Gray's career thus far as a rookie, he saw 289 offensive snaps. He converted that into 10 targets, 7 receptions, and 36 yards, including a touchdown. I do not see that being the ceiling to Jared Wiley's rookie season. After that, Noah Gray had 597 snaps as a sophomore in the NFL and 592 snaps in his third season. He converted those for 28 receptions, 299 yards, and a touchdown in his sophomore campaign, 28 receptions, 305 yards, and 2 touchdowns in his third season. Essentially the same season, year 2 and 3 in the NFL. If I had to put my money down right now, it would be that Jared Wiley has a better rookie season than Noah Gray's best season in the NFL, 28 receptions, 305 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And here's an interesting tidbit. Ozzie Newsome, one of the greatest general managers in the history of the NFL, if you ask me. He said that what you have to do in every draft is get 3 starters. If you don't get 3 starters in a draft, all of a sudden, if you don't get 3 starters in every draft, all of a sudden you start having holes pop up on your roster. Xavier Worthy, I think it's a safe bet that he is a starting wide receiver. The number 1 guy, maybe not. The number 2 guy, maybe not even there, but you've got 3 spots where you start wide receivers, and he is going to be one of them. Kingsley Suamataia looks like a starting offensive tackle to me. Jared Wiley, were there not the greatest tight end in history on the Kansas City Chiefs right now, Jared Wiley, in my opinion, would be starting over Noah Gray. That's 3 starters right there in the first 3 rounds just on the offensive side of the football. Then there's these next 2, which we should talk about a little bit in tandem. Hunter Nourzad and C.J. Hansen, both of these guys listed as offensive linemen in one way, shape, form, fashion, facet, or manner. Hunter Nourzad is, in my opinion, going to be a center in the NFL. He is a guy who is able to play offensive guard as well. Obviously, with the interior offensive lineman that the Kansas City Chiefs currently employ, he is going to be sitting on the bench for his rookie season so long as health is not a factor. But there were people who thought he was the second best center in this draft. That looks like a guy who could start eventually to me. C.J. Hansen is an interesting play here. I contend that he will get the opportunity to fail at offensive tackle. 6'5", 300 pounds, and he has very good movement skills. if he can get that weight up a little bit, if he can get up to a 310, 315-pound kind of profile, and keep his mobility, he is going to be a force to be reckoned with. He is a guy that looks like, if he does stay on the inside, is going to be groomed to be the replacement for Joe Thuney, because he is a guy that does have the movement skills. Now looking at these two names, Hunter Nourzad and CJ Hansen. 2024 is the final year on Creed Humphrey's contract. 2024 is the final year on Trey Smith's contract. 2025 is the final year on Joe Thuney's contract. In the next 2 seasons, at this point, the Kansas City Chiefs have 3 spots opening up. This season, I believe that Hunter Nourzad becomes Nick Allegretti, meaning that he's the first guy off the bench for any of those 3 spots. I think CJ Hansen might find himself on the practice squad this year, but I think it's also important not to be surprised if he finds himself on the opening day roster, because if he is able, he's a guy that was from a very small school. There are going to be a lot of scouting departments who maybe didn't have all that much work done on him heading into the draft. Now that he is on the Kansas City Chiefs roster and is going to be getting reps in the NFL in the preseason, those teams are going to have scouting tape on him at the NFL level. If he is the guy the Chiefs think he can be, and they have spoken pretty highly of him, if he has the ceiling that these sort of NFL draft community said that he had, and he displays that in these preseason games, the Chiefs are not going to want to risk passing him through waivers. And then you have your 5 starters, Wanya Morris, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Jawan Taylor. You have swing tackle Kingsley Suamataia. You have backup interior lineman Hunter Nourzad. And CJ Hansen. That is 8 names right there. Things at that point get very dicey for the Mike Caliendos of the world. Things get very dicey for the Lucas Niangs of the world. And in what might be an ironic twist, if the Kansas City Chiefs have to roster CJ Hansen through the year, it might mean that they end up signing a veteran free agent offensive tackle. If you have the young developmental guy, CJ Hansen, on the inside, you don't really have the roster space to screw around with a developmental offensive tackle like Lucas Niang, who should be pulling his weight by now. So I could see them cutting him or trying to trade him in order to bring in a guy who maybe doesn't have the ceiling of Lucas Niang. Lucas Niang, in my opinion, has a starter-level ceiling, but bringing in an older guy who has started in the NFL but is a sure hand. By the way, just real fast, there is a full-length video for all of these players on your screen right now already on the channel in the 2024 NFL Draft playlist here on the channel, except for Baylor Cupp. I meant to get around to doing a video on Baylor Cupp, just never did so. Now let's talk a little bit about Ethan Driscoll. I want to preface this discussion of Ethan Driscoll with this. I see approximately 0% chance that Ethan Driscoll makes the active roster. I think there is probably a 75-80% chance that Ethan Driscoll becomes a practice squad player for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. That said, 6'8", 313 pounds, 10.5-inch hands, 35 3/8-inch arms, ran a 5.22 40-yard dash. Driscoll has footwork problems. Driscoll does have, in my opinion, a little bit of mobility concerns. I think that he's not very good with his hands. But 2 of those 3 issues are coachable deals. One of those issues, the mobility, is something that we see players improve on all the time in the NFL when they know that their body is their job. And yes, that says OL next to his name, not OF. So if Driscoll is able to spend a season on the practice squad refining what it means to play offensive line in the NFL, he comes from Marshall, a smaller type of school, I think he can develop into a good backup offensive lineman who is able to not embarrass you or get the quarterback killed if he is forced into action. I said in the video that I did on Ethan Driscoll that I think it's actually possible that we see him move in to offensive guard, in which case he would not be a Trey Smith type offensive guard, but more of a Joe Thuney type pass blocking offensive guard, though he does have some decent skills in the run blocking department. That said, I do think Ethan Driscoll is an NFL talent and offensive lineman. I think he is going to play multiple seasons in the NFL. So when you take a step back and you look at these first 6 names, there are 4 offensive linemen that I'm pretty sold are actual NFL level guys. Now, only one of them is a tackle by trade, Kingsley Suamataia, but I think that no, that's not true. Ethan Driscoll is a tackle by trade. I just don't know if I see him being a tackle in the NFL. And again, C.J. Hansen, I think, has the ability to develop into maybe a right tackle. But what a way to give a position group a facelift in a single off season. Moving on to talk about Carson Steele and Imani Bailey at the same time. They are both running backs. The only running backs that we did not see any running backs in the draft. We saw only these running backs through the ranks of the UDFA. And of course, Louis Rees-Zammit was brought in through the international program. Between these two, Carson Steele is the more impressive athlete, going nearly 6'1", 228 pounds. The 40-yard dash, I have heard conflicting reports on. People in my comments section say that he ran a 4.6 something. The only time I could find listed anywhere was a 4.77, but he still had a 37.5-inch vertical and 28 reps on the bench press. He is a very impressive athlete, and there is speculation that maybe he will be transitioned into a fullback. And every interview, etc., that I've seen with the guy, he definitely seems like the type that would love to have steak every day in an attempt to put on an additional 15 pounds. Seems to be a guy that loves the weight room. That said, I think he is destined for the practice squad this year. Here's the thing. Imani Bailey is a very impressive football player when you start looking at the tape. I think that one of these guys ends up on the practice squad for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I don't think both of them do. I think the Chiefs will carry 3 running backs into the season. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco, then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Deneric Prince. I think there is a chance that they carry Louis Rees-Zammit on the opening day roster. I think that he will be more of a utility guy for the team. After that, Imani Bailey and Carson Hall will be competing with Hassan Hall, Keontae Ingram, and I thought there was one more name, but I suppose I am mistaken. Remember, the Kansas City Chiefs fairly recently, cut 2 of their reserve running backs in order to sign other players. This tells me that they're pretty sold on what they currently have on the roster, being able to fill their needs both on the depth chart as well as the practice squad. And now, Baylor Cupp. For some reason, that always tongue-ties me because he is from Texas Tech, so to be calling him Baylor Cupp from Texas Tech is weird to me. But I think that what we have in Baylor Cupp is the next Blake Bell. I have him here listed at 6'6", 260 pounds. The Chiefs list him at 243, so that's probably closer to the truth. But there are multiple places where he's listed at 6'6", 260 pounds from college. And then the 4.55 40-yard dash is apparently of myth, right? I have seen it several times. I have not been able to find where it was that he ran a 4.55 40-yard dash. If he finds himself 6'6", 260 pounds with a 4.55 40-yard dash, he's going to find his way onto the roster eventually. The 30-inch vertical, 119-inch broad jump, and 23 reps on the bench press are all numbers from his pro day. They're decent numbers. Possibly the most exciting prospect of Baylor Cupp's game is this. He's a good receiver. I don't know that I would necessarily say that he is exciting as a wide receiver, but when you look at Travis Kelce, who is 6'5", Jared Wiley, who's a little over 6'6", and then Baylor Cupp, who is 6'6". If they find a way to get those three guys on the field at the same time somewhere, there is guaranteed to be a height mismatch. And finally, Jaron Hayek, 6'1", 200 pounds, ran a 4.59 40-yard dash and a 35.5-inch vertical leap. This is another guy that if you start looking at his game, you find a football player that lines up at wide receiver. I think that he is going to make himself maybe not as popular this preseason as Nico Remigio did last year, but I think that he's going to find himself turning some heads in camp. Now, the issue with the Chiefs roster right now at wide receivers, they have a whole lot of guys who might be NFL talents. Might be. Obviously, you have Xavier Worthy, who is not going to be cut. You have Rashee Rice, who is an NFL guy, a starting level wide receiver. You have Hollywood Brown, who finds himself a starting level wide receiver. You have Mecole Hardman, who is an NFL wide receiver. Then you have Phillip Brooks, fellow UDFA out of Kansas State. Maybe he's an NFL guy. Jaron Hayek, maybe he's an NFL guy. Sky Moore, maybe he's an NFL guy. Cornell Powell, who has been a legitimate practice squad guy since the day he was drafted. Nico Remigio, maybe an NFL guy. Justin Ross, who has proven himself to be maybe an NFL guy. I think he's more than a maybe an NFL guy, but he hasn't put up any of the numbers yet. Kadarius Toney, who's maybe an NFL guy. Montrell Washington, maybe an NFL guy. Justin Worthy, probably maybe an NFL guy. Or Justin Watson. I think I might have said Justin Worthy. And here's the thing with Justin Watson. I say probably maybe an NFL guy, but he is a great number 5 wide receiver. But number 5 wide receiver is a maybe an NFL guy position. Great number 5 wide out, really good number 4 wide out. If he starts playing at the number 3 spot, I think your offense is in a little bit of trouble. That is a lot of congestion for a younger wide receiver who's in the maybe an NFL guy department. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.